Hey guys, welcome back to Release the Craftin. Priscilla here with another episode of Storycraft. And I'm going to tell you guys a story while I do a craft. That's what this is. And today I'm going to tell you guys the story of the 4 Skillful Brothers, which comes to us from the Brothers Grimm. Because I feel like doing some Brothers Grimm stories. It's been a little bit. So, last week's story was a Brothers Grimm story. This is another Brothers Grimm. I couldn't find a lot about the origin of this story in particular, which I thought was interesting outside of the Brothers Grimm told it, and it's from Germany. So if you guys know anything about this story, if you've heard anything about this story, or if you're German and you are familiar with this story, I would be very interested to know. I thought it was just really odd that this story didn't have more of like a history to it, but it doesn't, so, you know. But I think it's interesting. It's a little quirky, and we're just going to jump right into it, alright? So here we go. In the way, way long ago, of course, there was a poor man. Of course. And, he had no wife anymore because she died. Of course. But what he did have were 4 sons. I don't know if you knew that by the title of the story being 4 Skillful Brothers. There were 4 sons. And eventually it gets to the point where things in the world right now, like at this time and place, weren't really good. Right? Everybody was struggling. There was droughts. There were famine. And the old man was like, well, I can't really keep these kids anymore because we're all going to starve if I try to keep them all here. So you boys, you head out into the world and learn a trade. And then come back in 4 years and show me what you've learned. So he basically just gives all of his boys, like, the boot, gives them 1 coin, the last of his 4 coins, 1 to each boy, and sends them all out into the world. Now, it's important to note, guys, that while there are 4 sons, the story didn't care to name them. And I don't particularly care to either, because it'll be chaos if I try to. So these boys don't have a name. Don't worry, they have trades. Because what happens is the 4 sons set out with nothing more than their meager possessions and 1 coin to their name, and they walk for a couple of days and nights until they come across a crossroads that has exactly 4 paths. And then they decide, now that they've hit a crossroads with 4 paths, that they are going to part ways, and each one of them will take a different path away. So I guess technically this crossroad has 5 paths, because otherwise the one brother is going all the way back home, and that doesn't make any sense. So this crossroad has 5 paths. And so they all decide to take a separate path and seek their fortune, and then meet back at that intersection in 4 years on this very day, so they can all go home and show their father what they've learned. And that's what they do. They all branch out. And so the oldest, he goes his way until he comes across this man who's like, hey, where are you going? What are you doing? And he's like, I don't know. I gotta learn a trade, though. And the old man that he runs into goes, well, why don't you be a thief? Come with me. I'll teach you how to be a thief. And he's like, no, I don't want to do crime. Crime doesn't pay. And the old man's like, actually, it fucking does. That's why we do it. Also, if you're with me, you'll never get caught. Because that's how good of a thief I am. And I'll teach you all the tricks of my trade. So the oldest son is like, okay, yeah, all right. Bet. Sounds like a plan, because I didn't really want to look that hard for my trade. So he goes off and learns to become a thief. The second son has sort of a similar encounter. He goes about his merry way. He comes across this man. Man's like, where are you going? What you doing? And he's like, I'm here to learn a trade. And he goes, well, what do you want to do? And the second brother's like, I don't know. I thought I was going to live with my dad for the rest of our lives. And the guy's like, well, why don't you come with me and be an astronomer? And then this way, you can use all your astronomy skills to see everything that can ever be seen. And maybe you'll find a path in front of you. And he's like, wow, harsh, but yeah, absolutely, I would love to go. So the second brother goes off and learns to become an astronomer. Now the third brother, he runs into, wouldn't you know it, a man on the road who's like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And he's like, I'm here to learn a trade, sir. And the man goes, well, I'm a hunter. I'll teach you to be the most excellent huntsman in the world. So come with me, and you'll never go hungry. And that third brother was like, that's using your brain. I absolutely would love to learn a useful skill that'll keep me from starving to death in these desperate times. So he goes off to learn to become a hunter. Now the last son, the youngest son, he goes on his way, and it's a little bit more of a meandering path, but wouldn't you know it, you guys, he happens to run into a helpful old man who's like, hey, where are you going? What are you doing? And he's like, well, I have to learn a trade and then come back home to my father in 4 years and show him what I learned. And the guy's like, well, why don't you come learn how to be a tailor with me? And he's like, Gross. You think I want to spend all my time hunched over a desk sewing, like, people's clothes together? No, disgusting. And the guy's like, wow, judgmental much. Okay, that's my life's work and passion. But also, I'm not just any tailor. I am so good that there is nothing I can't stitch together. And I can teach that skill to you. And so the youngest son, having absolutely no direction or plan, is like, well, I might as well, but if this doesn't work out, then I'm going to waste all my time because I don't really think this is going to be a good idea. And the old man's like, come on already. So the youngest son goes off to also learn the trade. 4 years pass, and all the men depart. The youngest son heads out. He is now a tailor. So the tailor heads out, and as he's leaving his mentor gives him a needle and says, this needle will never fail you. You can sew anything together with this needle. The third son then departs his mentor, and the mentor gives him a gun as a parting gift and says, this gun will never fail you. You'll never miss a single shot you take with this gun. So he takes this gun, heads out on his way. Now, the second son, the astronomer, goes to head out on his way when his mentor gives him a telescope that can see anything that can ever possibly be seen anywhere in the world and off the world, because it's a telescope. And he says, with this, you'll never, ever lose sight of anything ever again. And so the second son departs. And then the last son, the thief, he just leaves. He gets nothing. He doesn't need anything. He can take everything he possibly wants. His hands are now his most skillful tool. His mentor gives him nothing, because there's no honor among thieves, you guys. That's a thing. So, the thief, the astronomer, the hunter, and the tailor all meet up together at the same crossroads that they split paths, and then they all head home. And when they get home, they tell their father everything. They're like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe everything I learned. And they just start spilling out useless garbage after useless garbage. And the father's listening to his stories of the sons and all their lives and everything. And he's like, I'm so proud of you guys. It's so amazing that you've learned such great skills and become such fine young men. I just have one question. And they're like, what is it, Father? Tell us. And he goes, can you fucking prove it? And they're like, what? And he's like, yeah, you tell me anything. You could tell me anything. But did you actually learn anything useful? Do you actually have these skills? Prove it. So they're like, oh, well, yeah, we totally have the skills, Father. And he's like, no. Put up or shut up. We're all going outside on a little adventure right now. So they go outside. They go to a tree in the yard. And he points up into the tree, the father does. And he says, hey, you see that little bird up there? And all the brothers are looking. They're like, oh, I can't see. Then the astronomer brother's like, oh, I have my magical telescope. Let me just look up there. Oh, I do happen to see a finch, a beautiful golden finch, who happens to be sitting on 5 lovely golden eggs. Is that what you meant, Father? And he's like, that's exactly what I meant. Good on you for being able to see something that nobody else can see. I believe that you are truly a gifted astronomer. Now, my son who is a thief, go up there, climb the tree, steal the eggs from this bird, without her knowing. Which is a totally normal, reasonable request that, a father would totally make, and it wouldn't cause the bird any distress whatsoever. You're right. So, the thief, being as skillful as he is, climbs up the tree and manages to whisk away the eggs without the bird noticing. And when he gets down to the base of the tree, he goes, oh, my brother spoke true. There are, in fact, 5 beautiful golden eggs. And the father's like, give me those eggs. Give me. So he takes the eggs, and then he goes over to a table outside, and he sets down 1 egg on each corner, and then the last egg in the center. Then he tells my son, the huntsman, shoot all of these eggs in a single shot without missing any of them. Shoot them right through the middle. 1 shot, 5 eggs, 5 different points. If you're such a good huntsman, you can do this surely. Which, he's a huntsman, not a superhero. But that's a lie, because he's in fact a superhero. He does it. The gun never fails him. So that's what he does. He lines up his gun, he points, he shoots. He puts a hole through all 5 eggs. The eggs split in half. And he turns to his son, the tailor, and he goes, if you're such a skillful tailor, stitch those eggs back together again and make it like they were never broken apart in the first place. Also, stitch what was inside of them back together. Stitch the little babies back together. Which is the grimmest sentence a father can say, I think, to any of his children. But especially his son, whose entire skill is being a tailor of clothes. Stitch this dead animal back together. The one I just ordered dead. for no reason. But the tailor, whose needle never fails him, does this in fact. All the eggs are sewed up, what's inside of them, stitched back together, and intact. The thief takes them back up the tree, smuggles them back underneath the bird without disturbing her, because he's so skillful, and climbs back down the tree. So they decide to wait a couple of days to see how good the tailor really is. And the eggs finally hatch. And turns out the chicks are fine. He has raw life. Because those are some Frankenstein chickens, or birds. They're not chickens. Those are some Frankenstein chicks, if I've ever heard. And in fact, they're legitimate Frankenstein chicks, because there's a little red line around each of their necks where they were stitched back together again. So they got the little stitching going on. But they survived, and the mother never knew that her children were blown apart for no reason and then stitched back together again. And so, having seen this, the father is like, I am so proud. In fact, I couldn't be more proud of how wonderful you guys have all turned out. You've all learned such wonderful skills. I'll never have to worry about you starving or struggling ever again. And they're like, you're not going to have to worry, Father, because we're going to set out into this world, make our fortune with our new trades, and then when we're rich, we're going to bring you to live with us. And he's like, great, excellent. That's all I could ever want, is to live off my children until I die. And so the brothers depart. They go out on their way. And it just so happens that the day before they headed out, you guys, a dragon came by. You know, just like a dragon. A regular dragon. It flew over the kingdom and happened to snatch up the princess and steal her away to an island. And all the people in the kingdom, especially around the royal court in the castle, were trying frantically to come up with ways to go rescue the princess from a dragon, but they really didn't have a plan or like anyone brave enough to go after a dragon until these four brothers show up. They hear about what happened to the king's daughter, and they're like, hey, we're skilled guys. We can do this, and we can make a fortune saving the princess. So they go up to the king, and they're like, King, if you give us a boat, we'll bring your daughter back. And the king's like, okay, yeah, because nobody else wants to go, so absolutely. Give these guys a boat. These guys who just showed up out of nowhere. I've never seen or heard of them before. They couldn't possibly be conning me out of a boat whatsoever. I have no questions to ask. So he gives them a boat. The four brothers get into a boat. They go out to the island, and, you know, when they're a little bit offshore, they don't go right up to the dragon's door. That's crazy. But a little bit offshore, they're trying to figure out the situation. So the astronomer picks up his telescope, looks through it, gets a lay of the land, and he's like, I see the dragon. It's sleeping with its head in the lap of the princess, and she seems to be awake and fine. So then the hunter brother takes up his gun, and he looks through the sight, and he's like, oh, I could definitely kill the dragon, but I couldn't do it without killing the princess too. I don't want to hurt her, so what do you want to do? What should we do, guys? And the thief's like, leave it up to me. I'll take care of this, you guys. I'm such a good thief. I can steal from even dragons. So they get closer to shore. The thief gets off the boat. He gets onto the island, and that's exactly what he does. He shows up, uses all of his thievery to whisk away the princess right from underneath the sleeping dragon. The dragon is none the wiser. They get her back on the boat, and then they depart. And, you know, they're all thinking they're getting away scot-free, right? They're about halfway across the ocean. They're like, we're going to make it back just fine. But wouldn't you know it, guys? The dragon wakes up. Because, you know, like myself, when you wake up without your favorite pillow, things become pretty perilous for you. So you got to scramble around to find them. And the dragon woke up, didn't have its princess pillow, and was like, what the heck? So it takes off into the sky and starts chasing after them on the boat. And then they're like, oh shit, what do we do? And the hunter brother's like, don't worry, I got this. So he takes up his gun, and as the dragon is circling around, blowing fire, getting ready to actually, like, set them all ablaze, the hunter takes aim, his gun never misses, so he shoots the dragon down. Except that the dragon is so colossal, you guys, okay? It's so big that when it hits the water, it absolutely swamps their boat, and their boat is shattered to pieces. So the four brothers and the princess all luckily know how to swim. They must have learned that in their time away. And they cling to the little, like, planks of the boat that are left and try to, like, regroup and get back together. And so they're all panicking, right? Like, they're all losing their minds. Like, how are we going to get across the entire ocean with just a couple planks of wood between us? But don't worry, guys. The tailor and his mighty needle manages to stitch all the planks together, and then eventually manages to stitch the majority of the boat that didn't sink into the waves below back together so that they have some kind of workable, like, boat. seacraft in order to get home. And they do. They happen to get home just fine. Everything is hunky-dory. They take the princess back to the king. And the king is so happy to see his daughter that he throws a big party, like a huge festival, huge old banquet, and everyone is like partying it up and having a good time. And then the party dies down, okay? And at the end of the party, the king's like, I have to reward you guys for bringing my daughter back to me. Here's what I'll do. You guys tell me, decide amongst yourselves, okay? Work it out. Whichever one of you deserves to have the princess, whoever did the most work, can have the princess as their wife. And you'll become an inheritor to the throne. You'll become king one day for bringing my daughter back to me. You strangers that I've never met before and asked no questions ever vetted at all or at any point in time since you've returned. You can marry my daughter and become king one day. So they're like, oh. So the brothers start talking amongst themselves, which is not really talking amongst themselves much as it's arguing amongst each other about who did more work and who therefore is more deserving of getting the princess. And the astronomer's like, first of fucking all, if it was not for me, none of you would have even known where she was. None of you would know where the dragon was. You never would have seen her. You needed me to find her. I had to navigate the whole way there, tell you where she was, and without me, you couldn't even begun this quest. And then the thief is like, hold on a second, brother. You wouldn't have the princess if I didn't go steal her from a fucking dragon. So therefore, I deserve the princess. And the huntsman's like, yeah, that's a good point, brother. Really good point. Except for the fact that the dragon did in fact come after us, and it would have killed us had I not killed it first. So ipso facto, therefore I should marry the princess. And the tailor's like, oh, yeah, totally. You know how we all would have drowned at sea without our boat? If it wasn't for me sewing together a boat for all of us to get back home, the princess would have never made it back home alive. If I didn't sew a boat back together with a tiny little needle and some thread. Arguably a much harder skill than anything else you've laid out before me. So I think I should be the one to marry the princess. And so the brothers keep squabbling in this fashion in front of the king, and the king's like, this isn't gonna work. Yeah, I realize that now that I've said it out loud, this was actually a really bad and stupid idea. So he's like, guys, shut up. Here's what we're gonna do. I have an extra kingdom over here. And then on the opposite side, I have another extra kingdom. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to split those kingdoms in half. So each of you gets a half of a kingdom to themselves. And then my daughter can marry whoever the fuck she wants to. She's staying here with me because I can't divide my daughter into 4 parts. And I can't argue with you guys about who did more work because it sounds like you all did a fair share here. And then the tailor probably side-eyed the shit out of the king because he's like, I don't know if you heard that I managed to sew a boat together with a needle and thread, but it feels like maybe I did the most work. But okay. So that's what happens, is they all get their own little kingdoms, their own little slices of land, and then they bring their father to live with them. So the father has 4 happy, prosperous, wealthy homes to live in till the end of his days, and everyone is happy. The princess is happy because she doesn't have to marry these squabbling assholes who only met her for half a second, but somehow are all arguing about how they deserve her, and everyone lives happily ever after. The end. And that's the end of the story. And I like this story a lot. It's a really cute little story. And all the skills that the brothers learn become useful, even though they're totally superheroes. And it reminds me of a story, I'm going to link it below, that the Cosbrarian tells. It's a Chinese folktale called The 10 Brothers, where these 10 brothers all have, like, a different superpower. And they're literally, like, superheroes. But, like, they only succeed when they all work together. It's kind of like this story, so I thought about that after listening to this story, or listening to her story. Like, I thought about this story, and was like, samey, so I gotta bring it up. I don't want to tell it. So I'll link her story down below because she tells it amazingly. So you guys should definitely check that out. But let me know what you think about this one. It's a shorty compared to some other stories I've been telling so far, but it's a good little tale of some brothers who learn some skills and then maybe bicker like their siblings, and that's what siblings do. I thought it was just a good story all around. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I hope that you did too. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate your faces, and I will catch you guys all in the next one. Don't forget, if you want to request a story for me to tell here on the channel, even if you just want to tell me your favorite Grimm's Brothers story, I'll do that in my request if I haven't done it already. And yeah, that's it. I'm out of here. So until next time, guys. Bye.